Hello and welcome back to another video. Now I think it's safe to say that 2020 hasn't been the best year, but in video game terms it's actually been a pretty good one. For example, we got new next gen consoles, which meant a slew of new games for both current and next gen, and today I'm going to be going over my top 10 games of 2020. So before we start, I do have a few rules. The first one is that I will only be including games that came out in this year. So my second rule is that I will be including DLC, remasters and remakes on the list. So the third rule is to not get too angry at me with where I've put some of these games on the list. So without any further ado, let's get started and look at the honourable mention. Okay, now I know this will get some of you quite annoyed, but my honourable mention actually goes to Animal Crossing New Horizons. Now the reason I didn't put this on the actual list is because I found the game very repetitive and I didn't want to do the same thing every day. I put about 30 hours into the game and I stopped when you had to get your island to, I think it's star rating 5 or star rating 3, it's one of the two. And I decided to have a portion of my island just have flowers on it because I thought that will boost the level. It didn't, and after that I'm just like, okay, I'm done with this game. But maybe I will hop into it sometime soon and just see what's been going on since I've been away. I think the last time I played was before the summer update, so I haven't tried like diving and stuff like that. Okay, so getting into the list proper, my number 10 goes to Immortals Phoenix Rising. Now the reason I put this above Animal Crossing is because one, it actually has a story, and that's a common theme with most of the games on this list, and two is that it's quite similar to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is a game that I very much enjoyed, and I know that the game is also on Switch as well, so maybe if you want to have a similar Breath of the Wild experience but you can't wait for Breath of the Wild 2, then Immortals Phoenix Rising is a good game to pick up. And the basic plot of the game is that you play as Phoenix and you are tasked with defeating the god Typhon, and the game is narrated by Zeus and Prometheus, and it plays similarly to Breath of the Wild, but there's also some bits that are different. For example, in the game there is something called a Vault of Tartarus, which is similar to the shrines in Breath of the Wild, where you go into the vault and then you have to do like a challenge, and then at the end you get a lightning bolt of Zeus, which is kind of similar to the spirit orbs you get in Breath of the Wild. So there is actually quite a lot to do in this game. I have looked on how long to beat, and it says to complete it it's 56 hours long, so that's quite a lot of time for you to be sinking into the game. The main story is about 25 hours long, and also as it's a Ubisoft game, you know that you'll be getting DLC because there's actually a season pass that gives you three like story packs coming next year, so you know that the game will still have a lifespan even after its original release. So number 9 is Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind DLC, and the reason I didn't put this at number 10 is because I actually enjoyed the story a lot more than the Immortals Phoenix Rising story. Even though this is just a DLC, it adds on to the base Kingdom Hearts 3 quite a lot. The first part of the DLC is essentially replaying the ending of Kingdom Hearts 3, but you have the option to play as different characters, and you also get some extended bits of cutscenes. Then once that's done, you go into like the actual new story stuff of the DLC, where you get to have a battle with all the 7 Guardians of Light. You get to have a battle with Kairi and Sora versus Xehanort. You get to explore Scala. There's just so much new added in this game that if you haven't played it and you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, I would definitely recommend it. I've actually bought the DLC twice, once on Xbox and once on PlayStation, and both times I've bought the DLC with a concert video as well. I know it's not for everyone, but if you enjoy the music of Kingdom Hearts and you want to see a live concert, then paying a little bit more, you get that. So what I'm trying to say is that this DLC is definitely worth the money and I highly recommend it. So number 8 is a game that you would think I probably would have higher, and that is Spider-Man Remastered. The reason I didn't put it higher is because it's essentially a remastered version of a game that came out 2 years ago, and stuff has been added, like they changed Peter Parker's face and updated the textures and added 4K support, but I feel like that to me is a lot, but it's not enough that I would have it higher up or lower down. You know what I mean? I would have it any different from this spot in the list. Regardless of it being a remaster, and as it was my first time playing it, I highly enjoyed it. The story is good, it's emotional, the ending of the game is very good, everyone does a great performance, and yeah, it's just a really fun game. And if you're a fan of Spider-Man or you've never played a superhero game before, I would definitely recommend Spider-Man Remastered. And if you are looking to get Miles Morales, you kind of have to play this one first. Okay, so at number 7 we have Tell Me Why, and this game is a story-driven game made by the same people that made Life is Strange, and it follows two siblings who pretty much are trying to figure out what caused their mother to kind of go crazy, and they go back to their childhood home and they have like flashbacks to what happened, and they have something called the Voice, which is an ability they can communicate with each other without actually talking. It's explained better in the game than I'm doing it right now, but it's a very good story. It's got twists and turns. I like the actual big twist in the game I didn't see coming, and I won't spoil it here, but it kind of filled a hole that Telltale had, where it's a good story driven game with good characters and good writing, and it's all around a really good game, and I'd recommend it to any story driven fan or fan of Telltale or just a fan of games in general, as it's a very solid story and game as a whole. Okay, number 6 goes to Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now, I personally love this game, even though, first of all, the story is pretty short. The Resistance add-on mode is, in my opinion, pretty awful, but I just really enjoy it. There's something satisfying about just shooting zombies in the head, and I'm not sure if it's because 2020 was a pretty awful year or what, but I just really enjoyed the game. Now, the length of the game, my first time through was just under 5 hours, coming in at like 4 hours and 40 minutes. So even though it is a short game, there's a lot of replays. You can replay it again and again, and collecting all the collectibles and the Mr. Charlie bobbleheads, and also you can buy an infinite rocket launcher in the shop, so playing the game through again with that is pretty fun. Okay, so number 5 is a part of a game series that I really enjoy, and that is the Final Fantasy game series. So number 5 obviously goes to Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is possibly the best remake of all time in my opinion, because the characters are perfect, the story is perfect, it still acts as a sequel as well as a prequel kind of. If you've played the game, you know what I mean. And it's just all around a very solid experience, and like I said, for most of the games on this list, I highly recommend you play it. The game is coming down in price as it's towards the end of the year, so if you want to have a good RPG experience, then I would recommend Final Fantasy VII Remake. Okay, so number 4 is Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory. Now, as much as this game is a bit odd in the whole Kingdom Hearts game library, it's very enjoyable, and the fact that you can play through almost all, or if not all, quite a lot of the songs from Kingdom Hearts, because of Kingdom Hearts 3 for some reason, you only get to play for a handful. It's really fun, and it's got a ton of replay value, as you can play through each song on beginner, standard or critical, and obviously the higher the difficulty level is, the harder like the song is to play and the more enemies you have to fight. But one downfall with this game is that there's only about 15 minutes of new stuff, and that's shoved right at the end of the game. But the stuff that is there is very, very cool, and it makes me really excited for the next game in the Kingdom Hearts series. Okay, so number 3 is a game that I actually thought would be number 1, but obviously the next 2 games on the list beat it. So number 3 goes to Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now, I am a huge Assassin's Creed fan. I made it my mission to play through all the Assassin's Creed games before Valhalla came out. I failed. I only managed to play through Origins, Odyssey, 3, 4, Rogue, Unity and Syndicate. But I played through a good handful of them, and the modern day story in Valhalla is so good. I won't spoil it, but there's some things that happen that I was so happy with, and the actual Viking story is also very good. The whole game is just very good, and like I said with Immortals Phoenix Rising, there will obviously be more DLC coming. One of them is set in Ireland, and the second one is about the Siege of Paris, and I know nothing about the Viking Siege of Paris, so I'm looking forward to see how that unfolds. And I'm not going to look up anything beforehand. I want to see how Valhalla tells it to me, and then afterwards I will look up the story and see how well they actually adapted it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the DLCs, and the game as a whole is very, very enjoyable, and I would recommend it if you're either an Assassin's Creed fan or you play the games for like the historical side. So number 2 is a game that you might be quite surprised by, as I haven't really talked about it, and that is Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Now, funny story is that I played the original Hyrule Warriors when it came out, and I didn't like it. Like, I really didn't like it. So the reason I got Age of Calamity is because it's a prequel to Breath of the Wild, and I love Breath of the Wild so much. But I thought maybe I won't enjoy the combat because I didn't enjoy Hyrule Warriors that much, but I ended up really enjoying it. So it's making me think, should I go back and retry Hyrule Warriors? But we'll see. I've still got 100% the game, which I am working my way to do. There's tons to do in the game. I've got to level up all the characters, all the weapons. There's a lot to do in the game, but that's a story for another time. But without further ado, let's see what number 1 is. And I think if you know me or you've seen my channel, you can already guess what it is. Yes, that's right. Number 1 goes to Spider-Man Miles Morales. Could it be anything else? I love this game so much. The story is amazing. The characters are amazing. Everything about this game I love so much. The swinging is improved. Playing it on the PS5 with the DualSense is great, even though it didn't take the best use of the controller, but I can look past that. The side stuff is great. Like I said, the story is great. Everything about the game I love so much, and I could literally talk about this game for like hours upon hours, but I won't. So I think you already know most of my thoughts about the game from my previous videos, so I'm just going to leave it there. So that's my list of the top 10 games of 2020. If you like this video, please leave a like and leave your games in the comment section below, and I will see you in another video.